Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Is this, everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Okay, perfect, good. Once again, how many people are here for the Sweden Day, for the DigIT folks? Okay, and how many people from the outside? Oh, nice, okay. Folks from the outside, here's the thing. The folks who have been in sessions trying to figure out this digitization thing and the AI thing for all this time, they've been like talking amongst themselves, doing like work things. And so I want to give them a little bit of energy. So can you all do me a quick favor? People who know me know I do this sort of thing, this crazy shit. Can you give them a quick round of applause? Ready? Okay. All right, that was good. All right, now that was a very Swedish one. Now, because I'm from America, I want to do a very loud one. Okay, ready? 3, 2, 1, go. Thank you so much. Well, for them. Trying to figure out digitization, trying to figure out digitalization. I love that you're actually talking about the difference between the two. And trying to figure out how AI fits into all of it. Really, really interesting. This is kind of the time to try to figure that out. In order to figure out this thing that feels like a future, I kind of want to go backwards first, if that's okay. So, energy down for a second. I want you to imagine that it's 1966, you're 18 years old, and you're here in Malmö, and maybe your name is Kim. School just finished, and you have this entire summer ahead of you. On the radio, the Hep Stars are playing. Later on, you're going to argue with your friends whether they're better or the Beatles are better, sort of thing. You've just saved up enough for a Vespa, and that's great because it feels like freedom. Tomorrow, you might take the ferry into Copenhagen just because you can. And right now, though, you're at home and your window's open and you can hear the hum of the Kockums shipyard in the distance. And to you, it feels like progress. It feels like the future. It feels like security. Your parents work there, and one day you probably will too. There's good work, it has good pay. Right now, though, there's no rush. You're young. You just want to have fun. Har en boll. My Swedish is so bad. The future in 1966 is everything. The Soviets just landed a spacecraft on the moon. New plastics are everywhere. We can't get enough of them. Lighter, stronger. Oh, the world in the future is going to be nothing but plastics, I heard. And Malmö is buzzing about this new Million program. Those super modern apartments that those like really amazing architects have figured out. They figure out everything. They sound incredible. Maybe you'll live in one of them one day. And maybe technology feels like not just progress, but it feels permanent. And as we know now, it wasn't. The shipyard, which directly employed nearly 6,000 people, would effectively vanish. When you account for the entire ecosystem of small businesses, suppliers, the shops that like showed up around the area to support everything, 20 to 30,000 people lost their jobs. And that didn't just affect the workers, that affects their families, it affects their communities, it affects not just the city, but the region. Now, to me, this is really interesting because not only was it tragic, but it was a clear sign that the system that we built for one particular future couldn't adapt to another. And I think that's really important when talking about this guy here, Cedric Price, who, Martin, I don't know if he's still here, Martin messaged me earlier this year when I was talking to him about a lot of the stuff I was doing with AI, and he was like, oh, do you know about Cedric Price? And I was like, oh my God, do I know about Cedric Price? He was an English architect, and he was a little crazy, but he asked this really important question. He did a talk where he basically posited, technology is the answer, but what is the question? And I added the last part there. What's the question in the first place, right? He was a provocateur. He was a visionary. He was an architect who taught more than he built. He actually didn't build many things. But what drove him was this very core belief that architecture had a moral obligation to serve the people. He recognized, though, that also people change. And so that the thing that you built one day may not be the thing that they need a few years from now. Hell, maybe a few days from now. So how do you actually start to think about that question in an age when you took a look at these grand monumental buildings that the star architects at the time were building, right? And how do you start to figure out whether or not they're asking the right question? Because what he saw was that technology built at that scale was often built for permanence, but didn't necessarily account for fluidity of the people. And that was really a jarring statement for the time that he backed up with plans. This is something he built, plans for something he built he was going to build called the Fun Palace. It was going to be a multi-use facility, is more like a framework than an actual building. They actually built, it was supposed to be built in a shipyard in East London, like their Cockham's, right, at the time, where it was all built for flexibility. You could sort of move prefabricated rooms around. Something could be a theater in the morning and then change to small offices during the afternoon. And he built it to be extensible because he understood that if we're going to build for people and not for permanence, we have to figure out how people change. More than anything, it was architecture designed to change its mind, right? And that was pretty cool because what he ended up doing was asking this question, saying that if we're going to start building things with technology, we have to make sure that the questions, the humans, are talked about because they're more important than the technology themselves. Nowadays, the architects look like this, right? They're not building with concrete, they're building with code. They look like the platforms we use. They look like our apps. They aren't physical, but they're virtual. And they enclose us, right, in a world which we operate, whether it's ChatGPT over here or Copilot over there, right? These are the spaces that we occupy day in, day out now. And I think there's a really crucial parallel with the architects that Price was criticizing or questioning in 1966 and these architects now. These are folks who are chasing efficiency, they're chasing scalability, they're trying to build something that works for everybody. And the sheer scale of that ambition can create a blind spot because it becomes almost impossible to miss the nuanced, fuzzy little human bits that actually allow us to interact with not just one another, but the systems we build, where that system is a municipality, a company, a university, or even one another. And so I think right now we have to have the courage to ask Price's question, but about today's technology. And this is super important to me, by the way. Really quick thing, I am an outsider, I'm American, but I've been deeply invested in the future of Malmö for a while. I have a lot of friends here, some of which are in the audience. I have an apartment here, and thinking about when I see the things that Malmö and Skåne have done to try to adapt to these things, to these new technologies, I see a place where there's a lot of possibility. And I see people willing to ask really important questions that I think we have to get right. So my perspective is as an outsider, but one who's deeply invested in this space right now. And if we don't ask these questions now, we can end up on a wrong path. There are all these headlines right now about whether there's an AI bubble or is AI going to take over humanity, and those are legit questions. Those are legit concerns. The one that concerns me looks slightly different, and that's that AI succeeds. I don't think AI is going to fail. It's here to stay. So the question is it going to succeed in a way where it's going to leave out all the things that make us human? And the way that we've seen that happen in the past is a place that I work in every day, social media, where, this is a talk for another day, but where I think we humans have adapted to serve systems, to serve these platforms, to be able to know how to scroll and be able to hit the right like button and hit the right share button that serves the system, but may not serve us. We've been through this just now, and it'd be nice to not go through this again. And so we have to figure out how to program for those messy bits. Those messy bits, I think, is culture. When we talk about digitalization, not sure how many people are actually familiar with it besides folks who have been in the Sweden Day all day, but it's basically the act of taking all the things that happen in the world or the place that's important to you, your organization, your school, your local city, anything, and making it readable, cleaning up, making it into data, cleaning it up, making it normalized so that the machines can read it. And if the machines can read it, then you can do compute on it. If you do compute, you can do really, really interesting things. You can find more value. You can find ways to better serve the people who you're responsible for. But what often happens is we end up building these things around things that we'll just generally call business logic, right? It's easy to quantify. It's something that fits really well as a KPI. It's a thing that is on the actual project spec sheet, but it ends up missing the things that are harder to understand, the real ways that things get done. I think we're all probably familiar with this, right? There's some of you who have maybe done this for 20 years, or people who have done something for 30 or 40 years, and they just know how to get things right, but you can't turn it into a process. That's the stuff that we need to figure out if we can actually make work with AI, because the risk is AI moves forward and, like social media, designs a system that works for itself and doesn't necessarily work for us. Now, this is something a friend said to me the other week. The Swedish system is perfect as long as you never have to use it. And this is about more than just sort of bureaucratic frustration. This is about the small things that end up coming up when you realize the system that you built works for most cases, but ends up maybe not working for others. This, I think, in my conversation, and by the way, this is somebody who's lived in Sweden their entire life, right? But I've also had conversations with people who are new to Sweden, and they talk about the trouble of trying to figure out how to make a healthcare decision with a system that's designed really well for individuals, but maybe works a little funky if you come from a culture where you're used to making decisions like that as a family. There are lots of different ways that these systems end up working really well for individuals, and in places where it fails. There's this really neat statistic, not neat, it's not neat at all, but there's a statistic I read where, I think it was Statistics Sweden from 2022, where it said that Sweden has so much more connectivity than anybody else than other regions, so much sort of satisfaction, but also really high levels of loneliness that kept on climbing. And I'm not saying that there's a causation thing here, but there just seems to be a correlation between people who maybe get frustrated by systems, and then when that system fails them, they're quiet about it because there's no one to talk to. And so how do we figure out how we're designing things for those edge cases? Because if we're not, we can build systems that are efficient for the people who know how to use it and make it really hard as a region diversifies, as you start to realize you have to adapt the system to different folks. And the risk is accelerating the old model or keeping the old model working and serving fewer and fewer people. There's this guy, Bernard Stiegler, philosopher. I learned about him while doing research on this. He was pretty cool. He actually had this idea that if you're asking that question of what does technology, if technology is the answer, what does it serve? Well, his answer was, well, it serves us because we are our technology. We invent tools and the tools start to reshape us. Put another way, there are ways that we have co-evolved with our technology. It made me think about cave paintings and how usually when we talk about it as artistic expression, right? Or somebody trying to capture a moment. And that makes sense from a 20th century view of what those are, but that's also a way to externalize our memory, right? It's a way to share an idea so that it lasts longer than ourselves. And the thing that Siegler said was that when we look at technology, we're using technology to extend our memories, our thoughts, and our identities. And there are lots of ways where if we're actually going to think about the technology we want to build with AI, perhaps we should think of it less as an answer machine, right? As that like one big thing full of like lots of knowledge that we're going to keep for ourselves, and to think of it a little different, maybe as a memory architecture. That's kind of like the jarring thing of now, because right now the dominant idea of AI is this like oracle, right? It just takes in lots and lots of information and just holds it, and then it's a centralized brain that you just ask it the question and it gives you the answers. How many people get frustrated by using AI? Yeah? How many people have had it hallucinate? Yeah, a few? Good. Nobody's decided to leave their partner over it, that's good. I think there's other ways to think about AI. And not as a big brain in the cloud, but maybe it can be smaller. Maybe it can sit on a device. Maybe there are some things we need to think about for building large systems, about privacy and GDPR, but also, what if we just built it for each person? And what if we started thinking about AI in a different way? What would that maybe look like if AI was a bridge for individuals in a place? So I've been thinking about this idea about what it means to create AI that is seen not as this information machine, but this holder of hyperlocal cultural memory. And not just with individuals, but how do we think about that with our organizations? How do we think about that with our cities? How do we think about that with our neighborhoods? What if the idea was it's lots of little AIs all talking to each other in order to help us? This would make it a sort of preserver of our memories. And I don't know about you, but memory is a thing that actually is sometimes the hardest thing to preserve. If I had something that acted a bit as a cultural conscience, this safeguard against like forgetting, this collective amnesia that I feel like I'm seeing day in, day out, every single time I open an app and read a headline or see a social media post, and I say, why didn't these people understand? Like, we've done this before. We've been through here before. There's a lesson that was learned that we've forgotten. I think, maybe that's the thing. And so this is a project I've been doing for the last couple of years. It's super personal for me. Alzheimer's runs in my family. Memory issues runs in my family. And as I've thought about that and my relationship to memory, I've thought, what happens if my own memory starts to fade over time? Could I use AI to kind of help with that? And so I've been building a local model, which means it's not connected to cloud. Nobody can go, like none of you can go and like talk to it, and I don't ever want you to, but it just sits there on a computer in my home where I've been training it on all my writings, all my memories, everything that I've written from the last 25 years. I found old zip disks, floppy disks, and I've put that into the training LoRa's to try to see whether or not it can actually represent me and if it's something I can learn to trust over time. And the biggest thing I've learned is memory is super hard. Like, it is not a simple thing. It is very complex. Our memories change over time because we change over time. Our values change over time. How we communicate, what words we decide to use. These things all shift as we get older, as we go through life. And being able to understand your own memories means not just understanding the facts of what happened at a particular time. This is the knowledge-based AI thing. But how did you feel? What mattered to you? Who was around? Your memories are connected to this complex web of relationships and ideas. I've actually spent more time, I spent less time actually talking to the thing and more time annotating the data, which means taking everything I've written and saying, here's the context for this. We code switch all the time. There are ways that like your text messages look very different from whatever you put in a Facebook group versus what you're going to write in an email. And to understand memory and to understand our own memories, we have to understand that. Now, this, to me, is a small-scale version of what digitalization looks like in some of the organizations, right? Because right now, maybe for some of you, it looks like just collecting the data. How do I normalize it? How do I make it something that it fits into a nice database or an Excel spreadsheet? Later, you'll try to figure out, okay, how do I actually make sense of that data? How do I actually compute on it? And as that happens, you may find those gaps that I found. It's not going to look like a message written to a bulletin board in 1996, but you are going to start to see the places where the data you've collected that you've normalized maybe doesn't necessarily work. And the trick is to figure out how do you make it more authentic and how do you make it more human. And I think there's ways that we can start thinking about what that would look like as a federated group of AIs, right? One might be like a newcomer AI, right? And this isn't, the idea isn't like ChatGPT where you're looking up information. This wouldn't be Scottish Forget like just taking all their stuff and putting it into a chat interface. This is about trying to figure out how do you actually identify and represent and help somebody through the messy bits of what it actually takes to get something done. And maybe it's not just like the tax authority and the migration authority. Maybe it's even things like someone invited me to dinner and I'm new here. What do I bring? When I walk inside, do I take my shoes off? Like there's all these little things that we don't fit into business logics, but are things that people face day in, day out when trying to figure out, if you're a Dane, trying to figure out the tax border situation, right? This is one I want to try to build for my VRF, but it's going to take a while to get them just even ready for this, which is what would happen if you had an AI for your city block, right? You all share, in our case, in where we are in Malmö, we all share a common yard. And so I thought, oh, what are the things that are happening in that yard? Who's that person who actually takes care of the garden? When is cleanup day? Is there why the hell is there a banging at 7 in the morning? Who's doing a renovation on their kitchen? And has anyone talked to them about this? The idea of this wouldn't be like a glorified Facebook group, but it would be a way of trying to figure out how do you actually look for and try to connect people through interesting things. When I brought this up with a friend, they said, oh, this would be awesome for figuring out how to find a babysitter in my building, because they just did not want to ask that on a Facebook group. And I was like, okay, maybe that's something you can do. The thing for me would be the laundry room. I have no idea what the rules are. It's insane. I keep on getting in trouble. If there was something that kind of like helped me through that, it'd be really nice. And these are things that actually apply not just to individuals and neighborhoods, but actually what if we rethought what companies did with AI that wasn't about information, but was about a cultural memory, right? The newspaper, as we call it now, I feel like I'm saying the word horseless carriage, because it's not a newspaper. It's like the cultural wisdom of the community, right, of the region. So what happens if you think of it through that lens? What are the types of things it can do? It can participate in culture and community in ways that look different from delivering a piece of media or content, right? And how do you actually make sure you're doing that with, say, a journalistic lens? This isn't a like, you fire all the journalists thing. This is, journalists are more important than ever because they're the ones out in the community actually understanding what events mean to people and capturing that in ways that can be accessible to others. And news keeps on happening. I was even thinking about SVT and how even drama is more than just a streaming service. It's a reflection of the things that were interesting at the time in a region, in a country, maybe even in a city, in the countryside. Those are really different ways of looking at the things that they do in ways that actually contribute to the community in a different way. And somebody had, and of course somebody asked me, yeah, well, what about IKEA? And I was like, yeah, that's a good question. And I thought, oh, you know what, actually, there's actually a giant cultural memory of years of Swedish furniture. There's a giant memory of all of our Spotify information and why things might be interesting to people, et cetera, where we're looking at it in a different way. And it's not about data, it's not about information, but it's about helping people connect to one another. And so I know that we're in different places when it comes to AI. There's some people who are super advanced. I've talked to people who are coders who they think they're able to use Cursor to do 80% of their work for them. There are other people just starting out. There's also a lot of people, from what I understand, who are kind of embarrassed because there's this idea that you're doing work for you. I use AI all the time. It doesn't do my work for me. I use it as a thinking partner. I think that's the way to engage with it. It's not going away. There are lots of concerns. There are concerns about the environmental impact. There are concerns about IP. There's, you name it. There's a concern of possible job loss. But those are all things that are actively being worked on. None of this is static. And I think that's one thing we have to remember. It's changing. People are working on it. The EU is doing amazing legislation around AI and AI protection. You have folks in France who are building the Eurostack, the idea of creating a sovereign system for building AI that makes sense for Europe. People are actively working through these things. And so I have this, I'm glad you used 2 words earlier that define the approach that I've been using, which is be skeptical of AI, but stay engaged. And so if you're going to do that, I thought through, okay, what are some quick ways to kind of get started with that? And so I put these down. 1, don't use it as an answering machine. Use it as a thinking partner. One thing that's really good about these large systems is that they have taken a lot of data. And I don't look for it to validate me. I don't look for it to answer a question for me. I use it to try to figure out, what am I missing? What are my blind spots? What are the things other things I should be considering in a decision I'm trying to make, in a strategy trying to build, whatever else it is. Talk to each other about it. Small teams. Figure out ways where you can actually start to experiment with one another, and everyone try a prompt and then see what you get. My team at EA1, we do bi-weekly meetings. Plus we have a Slack channel where we're always finding new things, we're trying it together, and we're talking it through. So we can see that we're all on the same page and understand it. And of course, remain skeptical and engaged. And so I kind of want to show you really quickly, this is the prompt that I use. It's like my second prompt in everything I do. The first one, like I said, I'm never looking for an answer. I'm looking for it to maybe examine something, tell me what the strengths and weaknesses are, and that sort of thing. But the most important part is this bit where I'm trying to say, hey, I'm not looking for the right answer. Don't give that to me. I'm looking for other possibilities. I'm looking for all the different ways that I'm not thinking about. And I can find those edge cases, because this becomes a direct way to start to address some of the things we talked about those gaps, right? And I think this is all super important, because Malmö has always been a place that's figured out how to work through and how to adapt through moments, right? If Malmö 1.0 was its industrial past, industrial base, Malmö 2.0 was this pivot to tech, this pivot to understanding how to build more services. And y'all did it beautifully. I wished we in the US actually followed Sweden that way. But we're on the cusp of a Malmö 3.0. And you all are in a place where you can start to shape what that looks like. Whether you work at a company, whether you work for the city, whether you are, whether you're just somebody who just uses this stuff. And so I want you to leave and maybe do one thing, which is to take that original centric price question and ask of yourselves, if AI is the answer, what is our question? Thank you.